Hey guys, Michael from Modulus Amplification here, and today we're going to talk about harsh frequencies in guitar amplifiers. And specifically, we're going to talk about Marshall amplifiers and the derivatives of them. If you're one of the guys that has your treble control turned to 0, then this is a video that'll probably help you, at least help you get that treble control turned up a little bit. So we have some learning intentions from this. Let's go through them. Number one is, what are the harsh frequencies and why do we find them harsh? And we're going to talk about why Marshall style amps suffer the worst for this compared to competitors like Fender or Vox. And then we're going to talk about what can be changed in the amp by you or a tech, or if you don't have access to a tech or the ability to do this yourself, what you can do using a graphic EQ in your effects loop to resolve some of these frequencies. Or in your DAW software if you're playing through a software model. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this video today is our friend Steve brought in his Friedman Runt 50 amplifier to be modified. He was complaining about some of the top-end harshness of the amplifier. Now, we've actually modified a Friedman amp for him once before, and so he basically came back looking for the same mod to be done to this one. And I thought there's probably a lot of players out there who fall into the same ground. It's not a thing that's unique to Friedman. It's a high gain Marshall-esque type preamp issue that, you know, a lot of guys who will plug into these amps will often complain that they just don't get on with them. They're too harsh. They're too straight in the ear hole. So maybe you're sitting there going, why should I watch this? Well, the question is, if you have a Marshall style amp and you're using it cranked up, or you're using the high gain channel, if you're running your treble and presence really low on those channels, then you could probably listen to this and maybe get some tricks to be able to increase the treble, increase some of that cut, but not have it be straight in the ear hole where it's causing pain or causing you discomfort. I call it Instatone, based on what the sort of sound you hear a lot of guitarists on Instagram using. A lot of those guitarists are EQing the guitar, taking out those high frequencies to make it sound nicer and smoother. Particularly a guitar by itself makes a big difference. Okay, so let's see what the problem is. There's actually with the Runt, there's two things that I did to resolve the issue, and I'll explain those as we go. But first of all, let's look at see what causes the issue. Okay, and for that we'll jump onto the screen. Okay, so first thing to look at is what makes a Marshall style amp or a Marshall derivative style amp have harsher frequencies, say, than compared to a Fender amp or maybe even a Vox amp. So in the 60s, Marshall, when the brand kind of got started and kicked off, they basically copied a Tweed Bassman amplifier. If you look at the two schematics of the JTM 45 and the Tweed Bassman, you'll see that they're very similar. That's pretty well documented in the world of the internet. But in the late 60s, Marshall started changing and tweaking that amplifier to get more power, to get more loudness out of it. And one of the things two of the things that they did was they changed the tone stack. So they changed two parts in the tone stack in particular. The one is the 33K slope resistor. On the JTM 45 in the Bassman, this was a 56K resistor. So what that does is that reduces the total losses of the tone stack, so more output to the power section, but also it increases the amount of bass and low mids available on the bass control. The other thing they changed was this capacitor. This is the treble cap that feeds the treble control. On the Bassman and the JTM 45, this is a 250 picofarad capacitor, and they changed it to a 470 picofarad capacitor. And what that does is that really adds more high mids into the treble signal, so that when you turn the treble up, you're getting treble and some high mids. So I've got another image here that actually shows you that as a comparison. So here is a frequency plot. You can see the tone stack there. This is done on the tone stack calculator. If you've not seen this bit of this little app, it's definitely worthwhile getting to play around with different values. What you can see there is the bass and mid. I've turned them all the way down just so we can see the full effect of that capacitor on the treble control. And what you can see here is I've got the two lines plotted, the 250 picofarads and the 500 picofarads. So you can see that the 500, this is 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K. You can see that there's a lot more of this mid-range coming into that treble control being turned up. And that is, it doesn't look like a lot here, but that's actually a really significant amount of mid-range being added to that control. So now you may be thinking, well, why is that so important and what's the big deal about that? Let's go and have a look at this image over here. So our ears don't hear frequency in a linear fashion, meaning it's not just a straight line across the full frequency spectrum. We have a sensitivity, particularly around the 3K region, where our ears are extra sensitive to sound. And what that treble cap does is that puts more sound power into this region, which helps the amplifier cut through and be heard more easily through a band mix. So it's one of these things where you really want to be able to be heard in a band mix, but also when you're playing at home, you don't want to be hurting your ears. By boosting the frequencies in that region, obviously allows you to cut through a mix without just increasing volume. You can just change the EQ of your entire guitar signal and cut through better rather than just boosting volume. But the downside is that if you don't like those frequencies, or if your ears are particularly sensitive to it, that's going to be a major problem. Right, so how do we get around this? Well, if you've got a high gain amp, and most high gain amps, Friedmans, I mean pretty much everything you ever look at has a 500, sometimes a 560 picofarad cap on the treble control, which lets through all those high mids, which if you're doing metal and really hard rock, you want that sort of cutting sound. But if you're more Eric Johnson or more Santana, you probably want to change that cap to a lower value. And what we did on Steve's amp was we changed that to a 300 picofarad cap, just so there's still a little bit of high mids coming through, but didn't want to totally neuter it. And we did another change somewhere else in the circuit. So I was quite happy to try that, and it seemed to work quite well for just reducing that area. Quite often you'll find when people are mixing audio tracks for guitar, they will actually go and cut around, there's quite harsh frequencies around the 2 or 2.2K region, in this sort of region over here, and they will go and cut that in the DAW software just to make it sit a bit happier and not sound as too harsh. Okay. Okay, so here's a little table just summarizing the differences between the two commonly used treble cap values in the tone stack and why you might want to choose one over the other. Okay guys, let's have a listen to what that sounds like. This is the 500 picofarad cap, and I'm playing into some vintage 30s, so they're fairly mid-heavy or high mid-forward speakers as well, so we should be able to hear the difference. This is the 500 picofarad first. Right, I'll switch it over to the 250 picofarad there. So straight away for me, I can hear that it's much more, the treble's much more set back, not as in your face there. Actually really like that. Right, so I said there was a second issue with the Friedman style amp that made me make another change to this amp. And that is the Friedman amps have a bass boost built into the power section, into the negative feedback. So if this is obviously not the Friedman schematic, but this is the negative feedback line coming to the presence control. They have a resistor and a capacitor in parallel with the resistor to basically essentially boost bass and some low mids. The reason that is a good idea is because it allows you to reduce the size of the coupling caps earlier on in the preamp, tightening up the preamp, which gives you a really nice fast response to your playing. But the problem normally, like if I just took this amp here and reduced those capacitors to tighten up the bass response, by the time I get to the tone stack and try and get volume out of the bass control, there's nothing there to be left to come through. So by boosting the bass up after the tone stack, it means that that bass control will actually have more effect, and you'll be able to hear it better. But here's the problem: is that what I tend to find for lead players is we then start turning up the mid control. On the Runt, you found the mid control really, the whole mid started to open up at around about 6 or 1 to 2 o'clock on the dial. And beneath that, it just sounded maybe a little bit compressed. Now, the problem with turning the mids up, which is this potentiometer here, is as you turn the mids up, it's actually allowing treble to go through with the mids. So as you turn it up, it's actually boosting treble all at the same time. Here I am showing you how the treble responds to the mid control. Firstly with the treble turned all the way down, and then I turn the treble up to show you how adjusting the mid control affects the high end response of the amplifier as well. So, talking with Steve about his amp, we were obviously trying to control treble better. So there was quite an easy fix, which is something I did on the Talon amp first, but I've actually since found that Marshall did it before, is we put a capacitor in parallel with the mid part. I used a 4.7 nanofarad capacitor, just put in parallel with that part. And what that means is as you turn the mids up, it boosts the mids that you want to boost, but it doesn't boost the treble again. So it doesn't aggravate the treble thing. Actually, if you have an 800 series amp, or JMP 2204, 2203 style amp, if you really get the amp cooking, you typically can't turn the mids up a lot, because what happens is the treble, with all this treble peaking, starts to get quite unruly. So actually if you did fit a capacitor there just to stop that happening, it would allow you to really just dial those mids in a bit more. So I'll tell you what, let's have a look at the actual Friedman amp, and I'll show you how I did the mods, and you can go give them a try yourself on your amps. Okay, so this is the Runt 50, and these components over here are the tone stack components. And as you can see, they're all on this big board, so to get under here to desolder them properly is a bit of a pain in the butt. Here's a close-up. Right, so C14, C14 is the treble capacitor that we've been talking about. So I replaced that with a 300 picofarad capacitor, and here is the capacitor I put on the mid control, which kills off some of the treble when you turn the mids up. So overall, it made the amp a lot more friendly, and I think Steve was pretty chuffed with it. There is another mod I sometimes do. I sometimes join these two. In fact, I normally join these two terminals together on the mid control. That means when I turn the bass down, it actually gets down all the way properly. But that's not really that important to this conversation. This is my 2204 with the mods fitted. Right, I'll take the mods away. Back to stock. Cool, I think I prefer it modded. So if you're not able to do this, do the mods yourself, or you don't even have an amp tech handy, an easy way to go and cure this would be to put a EQ pedal, like a graphic EQ pedal, into your effects loop and try and just notch out between the 2 and 3K region for the high mids. And if the top end's getting quite unruly, you can obviously roll down the top end as well. So using an EQ pedal just as a quick fix will certainly be able to get the sound where you want it to be. Okay guys, so that's it. So if you have a amp with harsh top end that you're really struggling with, so just to summarize what I've just gone over there is the treble cap can easily be changed to cut out some of those high mids that you might find particularly hard on the ear. And if you do like a mid-heavy sound, you like turning up the mid control on your amp, then you might want to try that little bypass cap on the mid control just to stop the high end getting unruly there as well. Hope you find that helpful. If you like that, click subscribe, put a comment down if you have any other suggestions as to what people could do in that situation. Okay, cheers now.